Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlene and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books I read in July. So before I get started with the books that I read, I first want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have subscribed to my channel. I recently reached 200 subscribers and I could not be more thankful for each and every one of you who are here. And in case you're new to my channel or you missed my community post, I am hoping to do a Q&A, kind of a get to know me video. I was originally hoping in August, but it might be in September because I'm getting a little bit booked for this month. But I do want to do a video where I give you guys a better idea of who I am and to answer some of the questions you might have. So feel free to leave any questions for that video in the comments of this video or on the community post. And again, thank you to all of you who have subscribed. It really means a lot to me. And now without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the books. So I read 6 books in the month of July, which is not too bad of a reading month. I also made progress on some bigger books, the 3 in particular I was working on this summer, but I'm not going to talk about them here just because I'm not quite done with them yet. So I'll talk more about those in my August wrap-up. Also, if my voice sounds a bit off or I sound a bit congested, it's because I'm getting over a cold that my kids so kindly shared with me, so I apologize. So I'm going to start with Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. And this year, as I've talked about before, she's doing 2 paths on her reading challenge, and you can pick which side you want to do. And I'm going to step further and trying to complete both sides. However, because of trying to do that, I'm completing 1 month at a time, but I'm making sure that I'm completing both sides before I move on to the next month. I'm not specifically trying to complete the prompts in the month that they are for, just as long as I complete, say, all of June before I complete July, complete all of July before all of August, and so on. So I read 1 book in July that completes an August prompt, and I'm sorry if you hear this squeaking. My cat is up in the windowsill, but I don't know how much the microphone's picking up. And the side that I completed is the Ellen Montgomery side, which is to read a book with water on the cover. And that was The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. Why am I holding it up on this side? This was on my TBR for July, but I'm not really planning out which books I'm going to read for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge in advance. It's just if I read a book and it fulfills a prompt, then I count it. This is a newer release. Stuart Turton is the author of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and this just came out in May. But so far I had only heard mostly mediocre things about the book, either people saying it was just okay or that they were even disappointed by it. So I was a little bit nervous going into this one, but I loved this book. This is so fast-paced. It's so gripping. It has fairly short chapters. I'm not sure there's a chapter more than 8 or 10 pages long. And there are several chapters that are only 3 or 4 pages long. So it moves pretty quick. And I think I might have enjoyed this one a little bit more than The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Unfortunately, explaining why I liked it more requires me to go into spoilers on both books, so I'm not going to do that. But this book is a futuristic sci-fi book that is set after a fog has rolled in, and anything the fog comes in contact with, it kills. And so all of humanity has died except for what's on this one island where there are 3 scientists who have set up a barrier to keep out the fog. However, one morning the people wake up to discover one of the scientists is dead. And one particular character is assigned with, I shouldn't say assigned, she volunteers to try to solve the murder. And she has 107 hours to do it before the fog reaches the island and kills everyone on it. The only problem is everything that happened the night before has been wiped from everyone's memory. So nobody knows anything about what happened at the time of the murder. Honestly, there was a lot with this story, but I really liked the twists and turns that he put in this book. I loved the way everything played out. So I have heard a couple other people say they love this book too, so I'm not the only one, but I do feel like I'm in the minority on this one. And it might be that some people enjoyed it less because this has more of a sci-fi aspect to it rather than maybe a more just locked room, almost kind of a historical feeling mystery. That could be why, I'm not sure, but I personally really enjoyed this. And normally at this point in my wrap-up videos, I will go over the content that is in the books based on the type of information you would get in a movie or video game rating. However, going over the content makes these videos quite long, and I also know that not everybody is interested in hearing the content on every single book. So instead, I'm going to leave links to my Goodreads reviews for these books, for all the books I'm talking about, down in the comments below, or down in the description below, sorry. And if there's a book that you want to know the content for, feel free to go check out my review. I'm going to start leaving the content on those reviews instead of on here, so that way you're not rifling through which content do I care about, which do I not, and the videos won't be quite as long. So I hope that's okay with you guys, but I think that'll just make it easier in the long run. Also, if you go to those reviews and you notice some of the content isn't listed, like one maybe doesn't have language listed, one doesn't have sexual content listed, all that means is there was nothing for me to include, so I didn't include it on the list. The next book I'm going to talk about is the one NetGalley book I read in July, and that was a picture book by Zach Williams called A Little More Like Jesus, which, yes, is the title of the song that he sings as well. And I was curious going into this book if it was going to turn out to be a picture book that was just the lyrics to the song, but it isn't. In this one, we follow a group of kids as they're on a bus and they're going through different towns that are named after various fruits of the Spirit. I believe it covers 6 or 7 of the 9. It doesn't cover all 9 of them, but it covers most of them. And so it talks about love and peace and kindness and joy and things like that. I thought the book was really cute. I really enjoyed it, and I do think this would be a good one for younger kids. So I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're looking for a good Christian picture book for your kids, or even for yourself if you like picture books. Now let's go ahead and go over the books that were on my TBR in July that I finished, which I believe is all of them except for the ones I was planning to take me until the end of August. So the first one I want to talk about is The Hideaway by Lauren K. Denton. And I'm talking about this one first because I actually DNF'd this one. So the reason I picked this up is because I came across several of Lauren K. Denton's books on Hoopla several years ago. And when I looked them up on Goodreads, they were listed as Christian fiction. And I have found some historical Christian authors that I really enjoy, but I have found very few, if really any, contemporary Christian authors I like. So I added her books, hoping maybe here's an author that I could read and enjoy, and finally gave one of her books a try this summer. Overall, it's not a terrible book, and if I had gone into it with different expectations, I may have finished it. However, I think the reason her books are listed as Christian fiction is because they're published by Thomas Nelson, who is generally known to be a Christian publishing company. But these are not Christian fiction books. I looked through the reviews for this book, and a lot of people felt the same way I did, that there was content in this book, there were choices the characters made that are not in line with Christian values, and according to the reviews I read, they're never resolved in a way you would expect Christian fiction to resolve it. And in the part that I read, and I read over half the book, I don't remember how much I read, but I read over half the book, and I don't remember there ever being any mention of any of the characters having faith. I don't remember any faith content whatsoever. And even looking up information on the author, there's nothing in her bio or on her website that says she is a Christian or a Christian writer. So just know if you want to read these books, it's fine. But if you're going into this thinking it's Christian fiction, it is not. So what was in this book that clued me in that this was not Christian fiction? First of all, this is a dual timeline. We get alternating chapters between a character in the present and her grandmother, kind of around the time that she was the main character's age. And in the historical timeline, one of the main things that happens is her grandmother leaves her home, leaves her husband because he left to go on business, and she knows it's a lie. He's been cheating on her for years and she's well aware of it. So she decides to leave home because she's had enough. And even though there's no divorce, there's no papers filed, no nothing, she ends up in a relationship with another man and ends up becoming pregnant with his child. That's about as far as I got before I decided I'm not interested in reading this. And again, if I had gone into this knowing it was secular fiction, that would have been a whole different story. But I went into this book specifically because I was looking for a new Christian fiction contemporary author, and this was not it. So it's not the book I was looking for. I will be honest, I was also kind of somewhat, bored's not the right word. I didn't feel connected to the story. I wasn't overly interested in the characters. I wasn't invested. So top it with the fact that it's not Christian fiction, and I gave this one up. So those are my reasons. You could potentially pick it up and enjoy it, even though I didn't, but I also went into it with the wrong expectations because of how it was listed on Goodreads. So just fair warning. The next book that I picked up was for Chantel's Agatha Christie book club that she's hosting on her Patreon this year, and that is Parker Pyne Investigates, which is a collection of short stories following, I called him a detective, but that's not really accurate. They all follow Parker Pyne, but he puts advertisements in the personals section, and all it really says is, "Are you unhappy? Contact Parker Pyne." It doesn't say any more than that. But he gets people who respond to his advertisement because they're unhappy for a variety of reasons. And what it boils down to is he has a really good understanding of human nature and human emotions and things along that line. And so when people are unhappy, he sets things up for them to either help them see things differently or experience something that will help them be happier. He does a variety of things. Most of these are not mysteries. The only mystery in most of them, or at least, I would say at least half of them, is how is Parker Pyne's hand in this? Because there are times when things play out and he's behind it somehow, but you may or may not realize it as the reader until it gets to the end and you're told how he was involved. However, there are several stories in there as well that are mysteries, either murder mysteries or maybe theft mysteries, things like that. But it's not all of the stories. However, I did enjoy this book a lot. This is one of the best short story collections I have read, as far as my personal enjoyment of it. And I really wish there was more, because I really like the stories of the person who's behind the scenes pulling all the strings, but you don't see how it's being done until it's revealed to you. But yeah, this one was a lot of fun. And I kind of mentally ranked the stories as I read them, and I'm not sure, I guarantee none of them got less than 3.5 stars, and I'm not sure I gave any of them less than 4 stars, which is high praise for me, because generally in short story collections, there's 1 or 2 5 stars, 1 or 2 2 or 3 stars, and then a bunch of 3 and 4 stars. And I didn't have anything on the lower end. So this one was a lot of fun. And if you like short story mysteries, which I do tend to like, because you get the whole story, but in smaller doses, it doesn't take forever to get to an answer. I would recommend picking this one up. And then the last book that was on my TBR that I finished in July was Morgaine's Revenge by Laura Ann Gilman, which is the second book in the Grail Quest trilogy. This is a middle grade Arthurian legend story, and in the first book, we have 3 kids who set out on a quest to find the person who's behind a sleeping spell cast on all of the adults in Camelot. And in this book, we're getting Morgaine's Revenge, which kind of tells you who's behind it in the first book, but you can still read the first book if you want and find out how they come about solving all of that. I thought the first book was a lot of fun, and so I did want to continue with the series. It just took me a couple years to do so. However, I enjoyed my time reading this book, but once I got done with it, it was kind of the realization of not a lot happened, to be perfectly honest. In the beginning of the book, one of the kids is kidnapped by, I know it's normally Morgan Le Fay. When it's spelled like this, is it Morgaine or is it still Morgan? I'm going to say Morgaine because that's how it's spelled, but I'm not entirely certain about that. But one of the kids is kidnapped by Morgaine and taken to her castle. And the other 2, along with one of the Knights of the Round Table, sets out to find her and deal with Morgaine. Mostly the kids are setting out to find their friend. The Knight of the Round Table is the one mostly setting out to deal with Morgaine. But then most of the book is them traveling to Morgaine's castle and also seeing the character who has been kidnapped as she explores the castle, as she meets Morgaine, learns from Morgaine, etc. Honestly, plot-wise, there's not a lot that happens here. I think the way I phrased it in my Goodreads review is this book very much feels like a bridge between book 1 and book 3 to set up the characters and get everybody where they need to be for book 3 to happen. So it is a quick, easy, fun read, but plot-wise, there really isn't much happening. So it's a good book, and I'm assuming you need to read this in order to finish the series. But in the end, it was okay compared to the first book. I'm hoping the third book will be closer to the level of the first one because I really enjoyed that book. That one's a lot of traveling too, but it felt like there was more happening in that one than in this one. And the last 2 books I'm going to talk about were not actually on my TBR, but I did get to them anyway. And the first one is The Mona Lisa Vanishes by Nicholas Day. This was the middle grade March group pick for this year, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get to it in March. My library didn't have it, and at the time I was doing better about not buying a whole bunch of books, so I put off buying this one until either May or June. So I didn't get to it in March, but I did get to it in July. And this is a nonfiction book about a heist in which the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre in 1911. And it's because of that heist that the Mona Lisa is as famous as it is today. However, I will say this book is a whole lot more than just the heist of a painting. This is another book, the way it's written, it is a middle grade nonfiction, and that's probably part of the reason it's written the way it is. But this is a very quick read. The chapters are really short for the most part. Actually, even some of the chapters that are longer don't feel that long. It's very quick snippets of information, but there is a lot of information in here. And it covers pretty much everything from the birth of Leonardo da Vinci to pretty much the present. And it covers Leonardo da Vinci's life. It covers some of the life of the woman who was the model for the Mona Lisa. This is actually her self-portrait, but I can't remember her actual name now. It covers the painting of the Mona Lisa, this heist, other art heist, the different people who were involved in either trying to figure out who stole the painting and were trying to find the painting, people who were connected with the person who stole it, and so on. This guy seriously did a ton of research to put this book together. but it is so much fun, and there's so much really good information in there and interesting information in this book. So if you haven't read this one and you have an interest in history or art history, I would highly recommend checking this one out. It is middle grade, but there's so much to learn from it even as an adult. So highly recommend this one. And then the last book that I finished in the month of July, or not the last book I finished, because actually the last one at the end of the world I finished on the last day of July. But the last one last one I finished that we're going to talk about today is A Lady at Willow Grove Hall by Sarah E. Ladd, which is the third book in the Whispers on the Moors trilogy. And I own a copy of this book, but I don't have it right now because I loaned it out to someone else who is reading the series as well. The Whispers on the Moors trilogy is a Christian Regency romance series, and they are companion novels. We follow different characters in each book, but they are connected in that they all take place in roughly the same area, and there are some characters you'll see from one book in the following book. But this book follows Cicely, who is the daughter of a blacksmith and a seamstress, and she gets involved with the son of the family who owns the estate on which her family works. And they're planning to run away together, but then her father finds out about it, and he sends her off to the School of Rosemere, which is the location for the second book in the series. He leaves with no plans to ever see her again. And then 5 years later, the headmistress tells her of a position for a lady's companion with an older widow named Mrs. Trent, and Cicely decides to go ahead and take the job. This is kind of her chance to move up in the world. However, the secret of her past, the fact that she had this intimate relationship with somebody else, haunts her, because she's worried if someone finds out her secret, it will ruin her and ruin her chances at a better life. Now, Mrs. Trent lives at Willow Grove Hall, hence the title of the book. But the steward of this estate is Nathaniel Stanton, and he inherited the stewardship from his father, whom he learns on his father's deathbed is not actually his biological father. His biological father is the late Mr. Trent, whose wife Cicely is now going to be working for. And he promised his father that he would not reveal his actual heritage to anyone. And he also doesn't want to, because he doesn't want to stain the reputations of his mother or his half-sisters. And even his sisters don't know the truth. Only he and his mother and Mrs. Trent know about his parentage. So both of them have secrets that they feel like if they were to get married, they would want to tell the person they're going to marry. But they also worry that their secrets would ruin their chances of being able to find someone to marry. So they do initially have a bit of an attraction for each other, but they don't know if this is someone that they can trust with their secret. So it is very much a slow burn romance throughout the book. And I've discovered for the most part I do like slow burn romances. But I will say I've read some that they're slow burn romances, but it's more of we refuse to talk to each other and tell each other how we feel. Those I don't care for. In this case, there is a legitimate reason, because in this time and in this society, how they're feeling and what they're concerned about could actually happen to them. So it makes sense why they're not immediately telling the other person, this is my story, this is my secret. So it makes sense in this situation, and so it doesn't bother me. It's also not the super heavy, I'm extremely attracted to this person and I really want to be with them, but I really just don't feel like I can talk to them. It's not that. There is a bit of an attraction there, but it grows as they get to know each other. Not just, it's very strong from the get-go, which is also something I don't feel like I'm a big fan of. I really enjoyed this book. I am going to be posting a video, I believe a week after this one, in which I will be reviewing all 3 books in the series and talking about the series as a whole. So if you're interested in that, you can keep an eye out for that one. But as far as this book itself, I really enjoyed it. And I said these are companion novels. I will say though, this book could probably be read at any point in time. But I would recommend reading the first book in the series, which is The Heiress of Winterwood, before The Headmistress of Rosemere, simply because the two main characters in A Lady at Willow Grove Hall do not appear in either of the previous books in the series. However, the main male character in the second book does show up quite a few times in the first book. So I would recommend reading those two back to back, but this book could be read at any point in time. All right, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of July. I actually had a really good reading month. I think of the 7 books, at least 2 of them were 5 stars. And I think aside from the DNF, the rest were probably 3.5 or 4 stars. So obviously you will have seen the ratings up on the screen as I talked about them, but I don't have them listed in front of me. But I feel like I mostly had 4 and 5 star reads in July, which is so nice because until this last month, I had not had a 5-star read since March. Let me know down in the comments below what was your favorite book that you read in the month of July. And of course, if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, please feel free to let me know what you thought of the books down in the comments as well, because I'd love to continue this conversation. And other than that, I hope you, as always, are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.